Hello, this is presentation on Chilsu and Mansu by Ajay Krishnaswamy. So Chilsu and Mansu was directed Park Kwang-soo, released in 1988. This director has also done many other movies, including Black Republic, Berlin Report, To the Starry Island, A Single Spark, and 1999 Uprising. And this movie also won an award, the Baksang Arts Award for Best New Film Director for Chosu and Mansu. So this director has done a lot of movies on uprising, rebellion, and freedom themes. So the cast: Park Jong Hoon as Chosu, An Sung Ki as Mansu, and Bae Jong Gok as Gina. So Korea was democratizing in the 80s, starting with the Gwangju Uprising. This is basically a protest for democracy, which was violently suppressed by the military. So Korea was democratizing in South Korea in 1988, which was the year of the Seoul Olympics, and this was a time of great political and social change for South Korea. There were lots of street protests against the military government, and they were protesting for workers' rights. The Gwangju Uprising, which was in 1980, was an example of this pro-democracy movement that emerged in response to a military dictatorship, involving massive protests and clashes between citizen and government forces. And this resulted in a violent crackdown by the military and numerous casualties, but it also served as a catalyst for subsequent democratic reforms in the country. So, transitioning to cinema here, Korean society, the average working man, was hardly portrayed in cinema in those days. Government censors were censoring a lot of the material, including the short story that Chilsu and Mansu is based off of. So it's not credited in the movie because it was actually banned by the government. And even the slightest hint of social criticism was not allowed and censored. So Chilsu and Mansu is one of the first movies which demonstrates how the ordinary men lived in 1980s South Korea. So as far as the movie itself, so the movie starts upbeat. Chosu is falling in love with Gina. He's excited about all the changes that are going around him, including the democratization process. And so he decides to quit his job and working with Mansu. And the idea is that people nowadays, they're not beholden to their bosses anymore. They can quit and roam free with their lives. They have freedom of choice. But all this democracy stuff is actually not super true. People actually don't have that much freedom. So, for example, the government forces civilians to participate in drills so that they can better deal with the North Korean conflict. Um, there's a lot of working class inequality, so a lot of people are coming to realize that only the rich people in 1980 South Korea are actually reaping all the benefits of democratization. Meanwhile, the working class civilians are not actually reaping any benefits at all. So there's a river called the Han River, and north of the Han River is where it's like extreme poverty. The two main characters, Chilsu and Mansu, are constantly in need of money, and they're down in the Gangnam district, where their employers are, and also the Chilsu's lover. It's much worse living condition. So the characters begin to realize that democratization doesn't mean prosperity for everyone, which is a very controversial theme, at least for that time period in 1980s Korea. So later on in the movie, the characters realize they're very downtrodden and they have working class conditions. So Chilsu is very optimistic about the whole democratization transition, but he has a lot of family issues. Her sister is disowned by the family, and her father is cheating on his wife, and Chilsu is not ready to speak to his family about his dream of marrying his girlfriend Gina and moving to America. On the other hand, Mansu's problems stem from his father's affiliation with the communists. So basically, he's not able to get any decent employment or education. So Mansu is uh, falling into extreme depression and pessimism. So at the climax of the movie, what happens is Chosu and Mansu they climb a billboard and they start yelling, venting out all their frustrations against the rich people. And but the problem is the distance between Chosu and Mansu and the rich people on the ground is too great, so they can't actually hear what they're trying to say. So they think that Chosu and Mansu are suicidal, and this goes for maybe like a few hours into the night, and they eventually get distracted, and one of them is grabbed, and the other one actually jumps off or attempts to jump off and is taken in a hospital. And that's depicted as a still in the movie, which I think was really well done. It was a pretty shocking conclusion, actually. So basically, what this basically means is that number one, communication is hard, actually, almost even impossible, because as shown in the movie, their voices are pretty much getting drowned out, like the poor people's voices. They're not being able to be heard, and so that's the main reason why the rich people are just simply not able to understand what they're saying. It's both literal and figurative as well. And the second thing is the misinterpretation, thinking they're suicidal and whatnot, and when they're actually just trying to vent out their anger and show like these rich people are, they're abusing us and whatnot. So overall, what I learned is Josu and Mansu aren't able to be heard throughout the movie, and nobody's able to understand their concerns. So there's actually like a scene earlier in the movie where I think Mansu was watching another working class man jump off, and he was like saying that man is foolish. But then at the end of the movie, it's him. So I think these things are slow to be unveiled as well. Another thing I learned was economic inequalities in 1980s Korea, and that certain locations in Korea are known to be much more poverty stricken than others. Finally, I learned about America's influence in the Korea Peninsula, which I actually didn't know that American had such a far-reaching influence, and that Chosu and Mansu was based on a short story that was actually banned at that time. So overall, the themes in the story I would say would be number one, communication. Upper and lower class communication is very hard. Nobody really understands the problems of other people. And then number two is the problems with democratization and westernization. It's not all good things like it's said to be, right? There are many problems with democratization, and economic inequalities can be widespread. And it's the amount of democratization is even debatable, right? There's still a lot of government influence, media, and censorship. So yeah, that's my presentation on Chilsu and Mansu.